Hello, Assalamualaikum, and a very good evening. Welcome to Tampil Bersuara Talk. I'm Najihah with Raja Muhammad Arif. Gonna be the moderator for tonight. And tonight we have a special panelist from Hungary and also from University Malaya. Let me introduce our first panelist, Dr. Lai Suat Yan, the senior lecturer, Gender Studies Program, Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, Universiti Malaya. Welcome, Doctor.
Hi, Nur Najihah. It's great to meet all of you, and also, of course, to Raja Muhammad Arif. Yeah,
Hi,
and
How are you
colleagues.
doing? How
Oh,
are you
I
doing?
think we're all managing during this COVID-19 times, but as good as can be, I would say.
Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. So, and we have a second panelist, Judit Végh, intercultural psychologist expert, PhD candidate, Doctoral School of Psychology, Eötvös Laura University. Welcome, Judit Végh. How are you?
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you all. I'm very happy to be here tonight with
We
you.
are we are so happy to have you guys tonight. And well, as I said before this, tonight we have a challenge to pronounce the names, but we made it, Alhamdulillah. And last not least, our third panelist, Dr. Boglárka Nyúl, Assistant Professor, Department of Social Psychology, Faculty of Education and Psychology, Eötvös Laura University. Welcome.
Hi,
How are
thanks for
you?
having me. Fine, thank you, and nice to meet you all.
Okay, all right. Well, as we know, Tampil Bersuara is a movement started for the public to speak out on the issue of sexual harassment and domestic violence. First of all, we would love to welcome all of you that we're gonna have our topic to discuss tonight. So the first question is, hold on, just a moment. The first question I would like to ask Judith, what motivates you to do the research with Tampil Bersuara?
Well, I have a personal reason to be involved in this research, and this personal reason is the fact that I lived in Malaysia for 4 years. So I have some experience about the life there. And beside that, I have conducted research in Malaysia with transnational families. So through their experience, I saw how they adapt to the culture, how they adapt to the social norms in Malaysia, and what kind of difficulties they had to do that. So I think the main two reasons were that one, and I saw also the women in these transnational families that sometimes they struggled, sometimes they had expectations from the outside, from the social norms, and they struggled with those. So showing that, I think it's important to step into this research.
I see. So when did you stay in Malaysia? When was it?
I moved from Malaysia to Hong Kong last year.
Okay, I see. So you are in Malaysia, is it?
I
Or
was
not?
in Malaysia for 4
Oh, you
years,
were
and
in
from
Malaysia.
Malaysia, yes, from Malaysia to Hong Kong, I moved last year.
All
So
right,
I'm in Hong
okay.
Kong right now.
You are in Hong Kong. Okay, cool. So next question, Raja Muhammad Arif will assist.
Okay, thank you very much, Nur Najihah Muhaimin. Hi everyone, I'm Raja Muhammad Arif Afifuddin, your second moderator of today. So, hello everyone, hello Judy, Boglárka, and Dr. Lai. How are you all?
Hi, great.
Fine,
Hi,
Thank you.
great. We're doing well.
Great, it's an honor. Honestly, at the age of 19, getting to meet these like really big people, it's a real honor to meet all of you. So, like Najihah said, I'll continue with the next question. That is also for Judith. Judith, I actually have one more question for you. So, based on your own perspective, why is the research on sexual violence really significant for you?
I think before going into the details, it's important to mention that the research in general can be very important to create awareness of a sexual topic, to to develop knowledge about certain topics, like in this case about sexual violence, and to reach a higher awareness in general, and based on those information to not only creating a conceptual frameworks, but also supply this information to the public, to the policymakers, and to anyone in general. And talking about the sexual violence, it's a global phenomenon, but we can't solve that global phenomenon on a global level. We have to go into the local levels, and we have to take into the consideration what's happening in a certain culture, what kind of tools they have to solve special problems in a governmental level or in a local level. But we can also talk about different levels like individual, family, community, or the whole society as different levels. And I think talking about Malaysia and talking about this research, even if we saw good practices in other countries, and even if we saw good campaigns in other countries, or even if we saw how they approach the sexual violence, it doesn't mean that can be approached exactly in the same way, for example, in Malaysia. So the research must explore what is the current situation in the certain country, and must explore how can it be solved, how we can understand that through a cultural lens, how we can take into the consideration the cultural heritage of that place, and what kind of solution we can find for that. And based on that, based on the research findings, it's easier to create a plan, a strategical plan for prevention and for interventions. But again, it's important to use that cultural lens, because otherwise the findings can't be applied on the same way than in other countries. So I think that's something very important.
Thank you very much, Dr. Judith. I think I like the part where you mentioned that when we're talking about global issues such as sexual violence itself, you didn't mention that it's hard for us to actually comprehend, or it's hard for us to actually overcome the fact that sexual violence is until that global level itself. So we must go deep into cultural events. So by having our research, by collaborating, it can actually make us understand how sexual violence works in other cultures. And from that, we can actually find a relevance. So thank you very much, Dr. Judith. Now, I'd
Thank
like
you.
to continue for a question for Dr. Boglárka, if it's okay. Doctor, I would like to ask, do you have any other sexual harassment movements that are effective and have proven to be fruitful in their cause? And what can Out campaign do to improve?
Well, the most viral campaign of all times was the Me Too movement. I think that's not surprising. Actually, on Facebook, the hashtag had been used by more than 4.7 million people in 12 million posts during the first 24 hours. So that's kind of amazing. So I think Me Too was both very influential and important. And one of its purposes was to raise awareness that how many people are affected and impacted by the different forms of sexual harassment and abuse. And it showed the context where sexist jokes, catcalling, and, well, grabbing women normalize rape. And it showed many people that sexual harassment is actually not an interpersonal problem, but a systematic one which originates from the patriarchal societies, and it is connected to the power structure, and it's embedded actually to the gender relations of the societies. And there is that although both men and women can be victims, most of the victims are women. And well, one of the other important things about Me Too was that it gave a platform for women's solidarity and opportunity to empower victims to come forward and giving them social support. And it was also an opportunity for men to stand up as allies. So I think every campaign can learn from that. I mean, for example, this campaign that it has to show that rape and sexual harassment it's a structural problem, and it's connected to the power relations, and 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 um, and it has to show that there are different forms of sexual harassment and not only the stereotypical ones. So, most of the people think that sexual harassment and rape is actually a bad thing, and it's a serious issue and a serious problem. But sometimes they don't label things as sexual harassment or rape. So the campaign, or we have to change that actually, that tell people that perpetrators are not these stereotypical perpetrators who are, I don't know, deviant, mean, low social status, low social economical status people who attacks other people's other people on the, I don't know, on the street at night, but they look like us actually, and we cannot recognize them based on their looks.
Thank you, Dr. Boglárka. I agree. When we talk about certain issues related to sexual harassment, and when we try to endorse this empowerment through campaigning itself, we have to look at various aspects, like what you mentioned before. We need to look on how sexual harassment is carried out. It's actually something structural, which a lot of people misunderstood about it. It's something that people want to point out and want to do. Catcalling nowadays are seen as something common, which people don't actually take serious nowadays. But we need to understand that this actually endorses and actually discloses sexual harassment, especially in the society itself. And when we talk about sexual harassment, yes, I agree. Majority of women will go through this, and I'm not saying men don't go through this; they do, but we need to understand that the majority here wins over the women, and this is because of personal aspects itself. And yes, I I like the fact that you pointed out men need to become allies. Yes, us men, we have the power. I can agree. Women have the power too, but when you misuse your power, people cannot recognize us, like you mentioned. Sometimes we're walking down the street and then we get sexual harassed, but sometimes we get shocked because we don't expect that person itself to do it to us. So I really like your points, Dr. Boglárka. Now, Nur Najihah, please, if you may.
All right. So next question, we have a question for Dr. Lai. What is the significance of the research on sexual violence that includes Malaysian context?
There are various significance. So let me illustrate one by one. I think firstly, when we look at the studies that has been conducted, just to look at the latest study in Malaysia by YouGov Omnibus on sexual harassment, where they surveyed 1,002 respondents. One of the main point they found was that only around half, or 53%, shared or reported the incident. So even though there are 1,002 surveyed, they were saying only 53% reported the incident. But who do they typically share the incident with, if I asked you? Majority shared it with their friends, around 54% shared it with their friends, followed by family members, 51%, and only 15% reported it to the police. So if you take into account the fact that, out of the 53%, initially, right, 53% only shared it or reported it. And out of that 15%, so it works out to only roughly 8%. Yeah. So if you look at the cases of sexual harassment in Malaysia, from the figures provided by the police, in 2016, roughly 200 over. 300 over. And in 2017, 200 over, 250 over. So say if we take an average of around 300 cases per year that is reported. So it means that actually there are over 3,000 cases happening out there. So the number of cases reported is actually significantly much lower than the actual number of cases. And in the survey, when they asked, why, what are the main reasons for not reporting it? And here are some of the responses. Because of shame. When it comes to sexual violence, it's the victim who feels shame compared to other crimes. Yeah. So I think that tells us a lot about how we perceive those crimes to be, right? Yeah. We blame so much so that in the literature you found that there's a notion of victim blaming. You blame that they invited the incident, through their actions, through the way they dress and whatnot, which is why when we look at those studies, it's actually very important to kind of question those perceptions that it is the victim who invited or who asked for it, right? So it's also very important for us, to be supportive of those who have been sexually abused and not say, did you invite, did you invite him in? Did you go into his car? Did you dress in a certain way? Did you do certain things to attract him?
I think people usually ask this kind of questions, Doctor.
Right? Yeah, that's the.
So this question makes people feel not easy, because if we answer it and they were like, oh, that's why like this thing happened, and they also put the blames, and that makes people stop making reports to the police and they were like, oh, it's better for us to keep it for themselves instead making reports to the police, right?
Yes. Yeah, and also because of the power relations that was discussed earlier, and we know that in society, the patriarchal relation, man has more power. And also, if you also look at most of the cases, the Harvey Weinstein case, which, the Me Too movement and whatnot, is like, who does he target? He target young budding actress, those without much power, right? And similarly, when I look at the case, the study on lawyers that I did in the Klang Valley, So we also found that in terms of the lawyers that are being targeted, of course, same. We see actually similar pattern. It happened to female more often than male lawyers. And of course, also junior lawyers are targeted, tendency to target junior lawyers as well. So it actually heightened the imbalance of power. So one of the reasons why it happened is because of that, right? And also, they also found that the reason why people do not report is that they fear that they think that no action will be taken. And if you look at it locally and internationally, in Malaysia, we have the infamous case of the Sungai Buloh incident, right? I'm sure I can see Raja Muhammad, you are nodding your head. He actually victimized, he victimized over 30%. That was, when they did the investigation, they found that it's been going on for years. Not 1 year, not 1 month, 2 months, and they found over 30 victims. So it's like, I'm sure it's not the first time they reported it. It has been reported, but no action was taken. So in a sense, we also see how the system actually worked together to silence the victims as well, right? Similarly, Harvey Weinstein case, right? It took decades before he actually was brought to justice. I think last year, March 2020, he actually finally was sentenced to, to 23 or 20 odd years, in prison. But it's like, how long has he been doing it for, and to how many women, right? Yeah. So in a sense, I think that kind of fear is also, I guess it's also based on, it's also very realistic that society doesn't take it seriously enough. Like when they lodge a report, no action was taken. And after a while, you're like, what am I doing here? I get shame when I report, right? Yeah. The survivor, I get shame when I report, and nobody is paying, is paying attention to it. And worse still, sometimes you also get retaliation, right? You lose your job, you're being isolated at workplace, things like that. So in a sense, I think all these stories and all these incidences and the studies that have been done inform us that it's very important that we provide good support, which is why I think it's very marvelous also. I mean, if you look at Kempen, Tampil Bersuara, if I understand it correctly, one of the things if I'm not mistaken, you wanted to provide, right, a voice or an avenue for those who have been sexually abused or, to come forward, right? Yeah, besides those who face domestic violence. And so in a sense, it's very important to have that kind of support for those who have been sexually violated to actually come forward to report it. Yeah, due to the fact that many times, not sometimes, we normalize it and say, it's a joke, don't be too serious, don't be too sensitive.
Exactly.
Not
In Malaysia, the word of sayang is also considered as a sexual harassment, right, Doctor?
Yes.
Boglárka and Judit, well, we call sayang means darling. So some people they use sayang just to joke around, just make it like macam it's nothing. It's nothing wrong to pronounce sayang. But actually, some people feel offended because the word sayang can mislead to sexual harassment. So this word is also seems like, oh, it's fine, it's alright to call sayang. So this thing can happen in Malaysia, and it also happened in Malaysia lah. I would like to ask Dr. Boglárka, um, how do you see the difference in your country and in my country about the sexual harassment movement?
Well, in my country, Me Too was quite big of a thing. So there was an actress who said that a man from theater abused her. And actually, there was a lot of articles on it, and then she came forward with a name. So Me Too became a quite big movement in Hungary as well. But actually, at the end, she had to move to Germany, I think. So so that was quite influential, and I think many people understood and got a better picture what sexual harassment and rape is about, and why catcalling is a problem, why I don't know, saying darling or sweetheart is a problem. But there was a backlash as well, I think. So they said that, okay, poor man, maybe they are not really perpetrators and they are just falsely accused. And they are just joking as well. Yeah. They said that, you don't understand the jokes, and that's your problem, not mine, actually. And there were voices that said that, okay, I can't even date a woman from now on. So I think it was, in a way, I don't know whether it was successful or not. I don't know how to measure success in this case, but it's for sure that people talked about it. There was a big awareness about sexual harassment at that time, but there was backlash as well. So the campaign was like this in Hungary.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your sharing. Oh, back to Dr. Lai, when you were talking about the blaming, I remember when we started the Tampil Bersuara movement, we received kind of attacks from the outsider. They were like trying to hack our Facebook, and they were trying to hack our admin. And one of our co-founder, another co-founder, she lost about 20,000 because there were hackers hack the system of her husband business, something like that. So she lost the business like 20,000 just because we started the Tampil Bersuara. And another thing, when we had what we call that, major sidang bulat, the conference, the big conference Tampil Bersuara, there were hackers hack our meetings with censored videos. You know,
Oh,
it's like a having sex videos, and they put it on that
oh,
when we had our conference. It
oh
happened
dear.
3 times during that time. So we were like, oh no. And luckily we have a good team, media team, and they blocked those people. And during the talk, when I was giving my speech, they also send the same thing. They also send the video, the censored videos. So there are people outside of the Tampil Bersuara who doesn't like our movement, because this movement, this is not NGO movement. This is a movement. This is just a movement. We haven't registered as NGO yet, and most of us, me is me is working. Arif is a student, and some of us we have lawyers, and some of us is also moms. So we just a group of friends who thought that we have to bring the change in Malaysia. And I remember when Dr. Lai said, is she was saying that it's quite surprising when a Muslim Malay girl who fight for the sexual things, because it's quite taboo things to talk, you know. Uh, a Muslim girl wearing hijab, I openly speak about sexual harassment, and I openly speak about how important the sexual education, because in our culture is something like you can't say like this, you know, it's a shame. And and for me as a co-founder, I think it's very important, because I don't want more victims to keep their story, because this thing gonna ruin the country, this thing gonna ruin the system, this thing gonna ruin a lot of things. It's gonna kill inside of the souls of the next generation. So this is why Tampil Bersuara are here to support all the victim outside, and I mean all the victim outside there. And Dr. Lai, maybe you can give some views. How do you think the research would help people to understand how important is this movement?
I guess before I go there, I just wanted to comment on some of the, some of the things that you have mentioned, right? And I think it's really amazing to, to meet you, because you have so much energy when I first got to know you. And also, of
Thank
course,
you.
the more
We
persons or the more people they are, especially people of, I mean, sometimes also people, in society, we divide people, right? Whether of faith or no faith, and, the way how they judge.
yeah
So I'm very glad to meet someone like you, who is actually staunchly religious and yet staunchly, against sexual harassment. Yeah. So yeah. So I think it's amazing, your whole team and whatnot. But I think you were also sharing about some of the backlash that you receive, right? Some of the attacks. And I think in Malaysia, it's actually pretty common to find that, because also when I was doing the research on sexual harassment, on gender inequality, equality among the lawyers, actually, I received, a WhatsApp purportedly initially, saying that I'm a victim of being sexually, of sexual harassment and whatnot, and it's like, and I was like, okay, I'm sorry to hear that, I was actually trying to get the person to speak and whatnot, because the person contacted me. If you contacted me, obviously you're interested, right? So that's what I thought. But no matter how hard I tried, the person was reluctant to meet. And I was thinking, okay, if you don't want to meet, I also have to respect your wish as well. I thought since you contacted me, you may want to meet and talk with me, but the person refused to. Never mind. But then what happened later on was actually very odd. The person started kind of, sharing photos and whatnot, things, or starting to describe things that are very suggestive. So in a sense, also based on the things that was being shared and whatnot, I think the person was actually, after a while, I just have a notion that the person that's doing it is actually a man, not a woman, because of the explicitness and the sexual things that was being shared. So suddenly I actually turned the table and I said, you are a man, right? You're not a woman. And then the other side actually suddenly became quiet and whatnot. So in a sense, I think this is the way, those who are against such campaign, or those who are against the work on sexual harassment, That's the backlash I think we experience in Malaysia. So yeah. But since I outed the person asked me, how do you know? Of course, I won't tell how I know. I'm sure after we have done research for a number of years, we know, we can tell roughly whether it's a legit or not legit, based on the way how the person responded and based on the way, how things are shared, right? Yeah. So yeah. So and yeah. So that's to respond to the comments that you made. And your question was that what motivates me to do something along the lines of that, right? Yeah. Why it's important? Why the research on this is important? It's important for several reasons. One is actually if you look at the research question, there are several sections to the research. One is actually to understand the dynamics between men and women. We wanted to know, what is societal attitudes towards the relationship between men and women? How should the relationship on men and women on various issues be? So one section is on that. And then after that, there's another section on our attitudes towards sexual violence. What is our perception towards it? Right? I think understanding that will be very important for us to, to address issues of sexual violence. I think Judith initially, when she was talking about sexual violence and whatnot, she spoke about culture, because when we look at how people respond, then we actually can find, the cultural view with regards to, towards sexual violence in Malaysia. And I think understanding that would actually point the way towards how we could address it better, and also point to us, indicate to us what the kind of work that we need to do more in relation to this issue. And of course, also the work that Tampil Bersuara still has to do, right?
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Dr. Lai. So, Arif?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lai, for your answer. The fact that you pointed out how here in Malaysia, all of these come back to culture, it actually deflects us as Malaysians. As that's the sad truth, actually. People
Yeah.
really do need to understand how sexual violence works, because some people, they have different perspectives, and when we talk about sexual harassment, people think that it's actually something taboo for us to actually reflect and also talk among ourselves. So it's a quite hard thing when we come up with these solutions to actually help. And talking about campaigning too, we're trying to empower what it's supposed to do. And I agree, it's something that Tampil Bersuara must come forward to do. Thank you very much, Dr. Lai. Now I'd like to continue with the next question for Dr. Judith, if it's okay. Doctor, may I, Doctor? So, Doctor, I like the part. I'm still thinking of the part where you mentioned about culture. Culture really hits hard when you talk about sexual violence, because it changes according to where we're talking about sexual violence. Maybe in your country, it's about something else. Maybe in our country, it's something else too. And the way it actually goes with moves around it, around the topic sexual harassment. So, I'd like to ask you, when we talk about hijabis, people who wear hijab, as example, Nur Najihah herself. These people are known to be them who actually go through sexual harassment. Now, don't get me wrong, in Malaysia itself, people always blame them that wear tight clothes, appealing clothes. But when people that wear hijabs also get sexual harassment, it makes us wonder why actually. And does it actually occur in the outside world, in other countries such as Hungary itself? Doctor, what do you think about this issue?
I think it's very important to mention that when we are um, looking at a culture and we want to understand what's happening inside that, we have to think about the dominant group inside the culture. We have to think about whether there are other ethnic groups as well. What is the hierarchy between them? Is it important to create a kind of social harmony, or is it more important to prove that and to maintain that social harmony against to the individual rights? So, for example, reporting a case or speaking up or talking about taboos, which ways does it go? Does it have to follow the cultural norms, what existing what are existing right now, or can we really speak up, stand up, and do something against that beside the individual rights. So in this case, if you look at for example, Malaysia, and we compare with the Western countries, we can see that there are differences between them, and that can have an impact on how to handle. It can have an impact on what kind of preventions and interventions can be successful, and because of that, we also have to measure the effectiveness of those strategies later on. So I think that's always we have to look at that by itself, like the culture itself, but also in comparison with other cultures in order to understand and explore better the situation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Judith. Yeah, I agree with you very much when you talk about how we need to see the pathway of sexual harassment that happens. Does it really follow the culture in a way? And talking about culture itself, it actually correlates country by country because, of course, even though it works different in some countries, but we we really have to correlate among each other because, in a way, when we all come together, we see significance in these reported cases. So I'd like to thank Dr. Judy, Dr. Boglárka, and also Dr. Lai for for having us tonight and for becoming our panelists for tonight. Trust me, as a student and as a committee of Tampil Bersuara, it's really a pleasure. This is one of the best experience I have since in a long time actually, because I don't
This
really
is the
get.
first time, right, Arif?
Yes, this
We
is
have
my first
international ones.
this is my first chance interacting with international people, international researchers. Plus, I'm a student, so the adrenaline works different. You know, us young people, we just get excited so much. With that, we're actually on the par to actually end up and wrap up our session. So we from Tampil Bersuara would like to take this opportunity to thank all of the panelists for spending your time to join with us in this insightful discussion tonight. I
Arif?
agree with everyone. Yes,
Oh, maybe we can have like last speech, I mean last final message from all the panelists before
sure.
we wrap up.
Before we wrap up, I'd like to ask for any insightful message, maybe some tips or hopes for everyone out there who will be watching our live tonight. How about we start with Dr. Bolaka?
Okay, one message. Uh, it would be that let's support the victims. Let's support them in speaking up, and let's be allies.
Thank you,
Thank you.
thank you very much, Dr. Bolaka. Dr. Lai, do you have a few words?
Yes, I think one of my main message would be if someone come to you and say that she or he has been sexually harassed or sexually abused, I think it's very important for us to listen and ask what happened rather than what did you do, what did you wear. I think that's very important. And
Exactly.
yes, and rather than to judge and to say, are you trying to revenge? Are you taking revenge because the person did something to you, the person rejected your advances, therefore you're trying to attack the person. Rather than saying that, I think it's also important for us to, investigate and find out whether it happened or not, right? Rather than to prejudge that it could be a false case. Because compared to other cases, when people go and report that their wallet has been stolen, it's not that often we say, it's a false case. But when it comes to sexual harassment, it could be a false case. I've run workshops, and sometimes this is one of the issue that people have raised, it could be a false case. Yeah. So, yeah. And the second thing is, I would like to implore, I would like to appeal to all the audiences to answer the survey, because your answer would really help us a lot, to understand the situation in Malaysia, and also, so that we could also move forward to suggest interventions and whatnot to improve the situation. So I would really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Lai. And last not least, our Judit Végh, sorry.
Yeah, I second Dr. Lai that the research and the answers can be very helpful in order to find a solution and in order to find the best way. And the other message, I would say that let's support each other, and you are not alone.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We from Tampil Besar would like to take this opportunity to thank all the panelists for spending your time to join us for this insightful discussion. We believe that discourse like this should be held more often so that we could create more awareness in the community. Don't forget to watch Live Station on Wednesday tomorrow. Follow Tampil Bersuara platform. You guys can follow Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. And so we are going to say goodbye, everyone, and thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
Thank you.
you. Thank you
Thank
to Nur
you. Bye
Najihah and
bye.
Najib Muhammad for having us. Bye.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.